Coming to you from the heart of the Great White North. Welcome to the Canadian Prepper Podcast. Immerse yourself in the world of preparedness with insights from seasoned experts and a touch of Canadian practicality. Your go-to source for all things survival, resilience, and self-reliance. Now, let's kick off another episode packed with knowledge and strategies to ensure you're ready for whatever life may throw your way. Stay tuned and let the journey to preparedness begin.
Welcome to episode number 229 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We are recording February the 4th, 2024. My name is Eric, host of the show, based in Southern Ontario, hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, and of course, computer geek. As a first responder, witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events and started a small preparedness company to help people get better prepared for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
And I'm Jeff. I am based in Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, ham radio operator, general overall handyman, and weather nerd.
And I'm the Frugal Gunny. I recently moved to Northern Ontario, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. I'm an off-gridder, shooter, hunter, fisher, gatherer, trapper type, and a generalist. And it's only fairly recently that I came to accept that I'm a prepper.
And then you came on a podcast.
Yes.
Hey, we got Dave with us tonight.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Dave Eisel. I'm from the... You may have seen me on the Canadian Patriot podcast. I'm a avid competition shooter, hunter, and angler as well, which I think is one of the main reasons I've been brought in tonight. Give my 2 cents maybe, and shoot the breeze with the gentleman on the show.
Awesome. Well, if you want to help support the show, embrace our new intro, you can buy some swag. We've got the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt and the tactical Velcro patch at prepperpodcast.ca. All lights. Oh my God, I can't talk tonight. All help keeps the lights on and the backup generator fueled. I'm going to have another sip of rye.
And if you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and submit a review wherever you may have found us. We want your feedback, good or bad. We also invite you to reach out and tell us about something you've learned this week, or if there's a topic you want us to cover, you can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
All right, so we've got some jigging content for you in this episode. I'm going to start out with some relevant news articles. We'll catch you up on what we've done lately for our own personal preps. We're going to get into the main topic. We're talking about fishing, and tonight it's actually the fish out of the water, not the cyber stuff we talked about a few episodes ago. So let's move into the news.
So fishing with an F, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Sometimes many.
So if you live anywhere in the Maritimes, you know that you are getting snow, and more snow. We have one of our panelists actually that comes on the odd time, and he lives in Halifax, and he sent us a couple of pictures, and they are just getting bombarded with snow. Cape Breton has declared a state of emergency. They're expecting anywhere up to, I say up to, so don't have a big panic, but there's been a lot of pictures of a ton of snow. They're saying they could be up to 150 centimeters before this whole storm moves away sometime Monday night into Tuesday. But anywhere, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, might even get over towards Newfoundland. I'll maybe talk about it a bit more in my weather blurb, but yeah, they're getting hammered with snow. He said he hasn't seen that much snow in years.
I saw a few pictures of it on the internet.
Up then?
Yeah. I think it's too deep for snowmobiles. I was looking at a few quick videos of it, and like it's as tall as me. Like it's over 5 feet of snow.
Yeah, it is, and that's
taking it out.
Snowmobiles are great, but they're not designed for that kind of fluff when it's that deep. So
you get bogged right in because it's not hard packed yet.
The latest quickie update I got from just a quick thing on Cape Breton and that area was they said 40% of their roads are impassable.
Mm.
Wow. All they're concentrating on with the plows is basically the main highways and any arterial road that may take you towards a medical center. And outside of that, you're on your own. So
wow. Crazy. All right, let's move into what we've done lately for preps, and we'll start out with Jeff.
again, wow, I'm number one again.
Yeah. Wow.
I helped a friend repair and get his generator going. I made a comment to him about he made a comment about his generator, and of course, me being me, I just said, "Well, have you tested it? Have you had it running lately?" "Oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine." And he called me up and said, "It won't start." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not surprised." So just there wasn't a lot to it. Drained out all the crappy gas, flushed out, cleaned the carb, put it back together. Everything worked great. So I did a little bit of fuel rotation, and I picked up a new mobile ham radio, just a really dinky little one that I'm going to be able to put in my vehicle and get a start on that. So I just need to get it all wired up and get the antenna wired up, which I'm sure Mr. Radio Nerd Eric will be willing to help me with. So it'll
cost you a few beers, but I'll help.
It always does.
I got to point out, Kirk in the live chat has a very important question. Will a can opener antenna? Very important. Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah, you never know, do you?
I'm sure we could tune one up.
What kind of range do you think you might get out of that, though?
Obviously, all the FARs.
I want to try this just to see we did it.
We'll try it one day over a couple beers. We'll see how it goes. For myself, a little bit of radio nerdness as well. This past week, got out with the portable rig to the park to do a little Parks on the Air. Been trying to iron out a few little problems with the setup the last little while, and I think finally got it all sorted. I was having some audio issues where people just couldn't hear me, and they were complaining about distorted audio, and took a lot of troubleshooting. But 85 contacts in about an hour and a half, and I think I got it all sorted out. And just goes back to the whole testing your gear and knowing how to use it, right? Had I have not done that, I would have had this audio issue the whole time and maybe would never been able to make contact with anybody. So at least now I know it's all fixed. It works. I know how to set it up so that it doesn't happen again.
That's a lot of contacts in a short amount of time, but
Parks on the Air is fantastic for that. You just throw your call out, and as soon as you get spotted on the spotting page, the wave comes and you get a huge pile up. It's a lot of fun if you're a radio nerd anyways.
Well, it's giving me high hopes for when I go mobile.
And all the contacts are mostly in the States, but then all of a sudden out of nowhere, I had one station from Spain jump in. Just impressive. A little wire in the tree in the park.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Nice.
What do you got, Frugal?
Well, on my end, I've been pretty busy preparing for my new gig that I'm starting tomorrow. Otherwise, it's just bringing a few ADC tweaks. That's about it. Otherwise, I'm doing some canned goods rotation. So, exciting food recipes like cheesy hot crab dip.
Sign me up.
Yeah, it's actually pretty darn tasty. So it's a hit. I'll be doing it again. Other than that, I'm just doing some minor truck maintenance like oil changes, tire pressure checking, which I usually do every couple of weeks, but I've let it slip recently. So just doing all that prior to hitting the road, and that's about it. Other than that, getting ready for work.
Never ends. You've done anything for any preparedness this last week, Dave, or anything you want to comment on, or just want to jump into the main topic?
Always lots of little things this weekend. Got lots done. Like yesterday, I was at the range making sure I bought a new rifle, so I was zeroing it in. So having a zeroed rifle is kind of important if you actually want to hit something. And then
this is true.
Yeah, and then I have a very large maple out front, and the power lines are very close to it. So I just did a little trimming around that tree because it doesn't look like the town gives a shit. So even though I'm, pretty much in the middle of town, so trimmed up a whole bunch of trees and branches off of it that were kind of, one was hanging over Buddy's car for my neighbor. So, I'd feel really bad if that ever fell on his car. And then some more that were, right around. I don't think they're power lines. I think they're like cable internet lines, because they're like so low to the ground. But obviously, losing internet's a big deal these days. So trying to keep that not not in danger of going down in a storm, which it's dangerously getting close to that. So trim that all up while it's still cold out. So hopefully it's least amount of impact on the tree, and then now I have lots of kindling again as well. So the next thing will be to get a fire pit going in the backyard. It's kind of just I just moved into my house not too long ago, but it lasts a little over a year now. But the backyard is basically a blank slate. It's just a bunch of grass, so I can do with it whatever I want. And I'd like to get a fire pit back there for camping out. It doesn't seem like the town minds too much as long as you keep it reasonable. My brother next door has one, so I figure I might as well get one going too.
I was just going to say the town doesn't care until the neighbor calls, but if the neighbor's your brother, perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So we're good. I think there's at least like we there's like a back alley, and then there's some more houses that with their backyards facing us, and I think at least there's probably about a row of about eight or 10 houses together. Like they're like long lots but skinny, but I'd say at least 4 or 5 other people also have fire pits back there. So I think everybody's kind of partaking and not too worried about it.
Very nice.
Until the fire gets over the eave, and then more people can see it.
Yeah. Like
and by the way, it's not a real fire till it gets over the eaves.
Yeah,
this is true.
That's just my opinion.
Well, I think the plan is to get a used truck rim from work, and then and hopefully that'll you can only make it so big if it's just like a 20-inch truck rim. It shouldn't get too out of hand. You know what I mean?
You haven't seen Jeff with fire before, hey?
When you can get that truck rim to glow in the dark, let me know.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Always ways.
Awesome. Well, with that, how about we move into the main topic, shall we? So this evening, we figured we would get into fishing. And like I said in the intro there, we're not talking about the fishing with the pH and the computers and all the ones and zeros. We're talking about the actual fish out of the water. It's a topic we haven't covered yet in 229 episodes. I'm surprised we haven't, but here we are. So, all of us, for the most part, kind of dabble in it. Myself and Jeff are very good at fishing beer out of the cooler. We go on an annual fishing trip, but the whole point is to just beer out of the cooler, and we might put lines in the water, maybe, but it's more of a drinking trip than a fishing trip, but that's all right. We figured we heard that Dave knows a thing or two about fishing, and invited him on to answer a few questions, because our techniques for getting beer out of the cooler probably won't work as well as getting fish out of the water. So
we
bring someone out.
Pretty big.
I will say this. Sorry, Dave, just want to jump in. So I don't have to fish, or me and Eric on the fishing trip, we don't have to fish much when we have the whisperer with us.
This is true.
One of the guys that fishes with us, how he does it, I have no idea. Every time he does it, I want to punch him in the face. I'll fish at a spot for 5 minutes. I won't get a thing. He'll walk over. He'll say, the fish is right there. He'll cast over there. 30 seconds later, he's got a fish on his rod. I don't
and another one chasing that one. Yep.
I have no clue how he does it. I don't know. But yes,
it's
as
true.
Eric says, I do like to fish. But my main claim to fame is fishing the beer out of the cooler. I won't deny that.
Awesome. Well, I guess we'll start out. Like I said, we brought Dave out this evening to kind of talk about fishing, because apparently he's got a little bit more knowledge and experience than myself, Gunny, and Jeff do. Are you a beer out of the cooler fisher too, Dave, or are you actually a fish out of the water type fisher?
I'm generally a fill the chain up with fish first, and then I'll come home and start fishing out of the cooler once we're cutting up some fillets. I've been fishing since I was 5 years old with my dad. That's kind of our thing. That's how we bond and how we hang out together. And my dad's retired now, and as into these things as I am, that's how into fishing he is. Every spare weekend or every spare day moment that he has, he's going out fishing, and it does not matter what time of year it is. There's always some sort of fishing to be had. And that's the nice thing why I think it's pretty surprising to me that you guys have never talked about fishing before. It's one of those things that you can have a source of protein all around all times of the year if you know what you're doing and where to go. Whether it's ice fishing or in the fall and the spring, you can go in the rivers. Because all the fish are spawning in the rivers, and then out on the main lakes and along the shorelines in the summertime. So yeah, there's lots of fish, and depending on where you are, just knowing the right things, even the smallest rivers, you'd be surprised there could be a trout just sitting in a little pool that you can then feed yourself for a few days with, at least, if you get hooked into it.
I have to agree.
Give us an idea. Like you say, they could be in a stream or a small river or a lake. Mm-hmm. Give us an idea. Are there better spots to go? Like I've heard some people say where, if there's a sandbar or something like that, fish just off the sandbar, kind of down at the bottom, or are there any hints for
absolutely
us to find a good spot?
Sandbars kind of usually would mean that you're already on the lake, so that's going to infer that you have a boat. So that's kind of the first barrier to entry when it comes to bigger lake fishing. But as far as more inland stuff, you're usually going to be looking for, as far as rivers are concerned, you're looking usually for river bends where the river speeds up usually around the bends, and there's usually, from the natural erosion of how it comes around the corner, it's going to wear a deeper pool in that corner, and so the fish are always going to be down in that pool. So if you can put a little weight on your line and get, honestly, just some little worms under a rock, they go crazy for that. So all you need is a hook and a sinker. If you can get your line down at the bottom of that pool, you're probably going to get a bite. You're probably going to catch a fish. So you're usually looking for, faster running water, deeper pools when it comes to rivers. And then also river mouths are usually where fish are usually coming in and out of. Often fish will come in to the shallows and eat during the morning hours and the evening. And then they'll go back out on the main lake during the day where the water's cooler, and they can go down in the deeper water, and then they come back in at night. And it's the same with even shallow lakes. You're usually looking deeper water during the day. Most fish don't like sunlight, so you're usually trying to go a little deeper during the day, and then at night they usually will come in a little shallower. If you're on shallow lakes, if you're just in a like a canoe on a shallower lake, you're usually looking for like weed beds, like you're looking for like the edge of weed beds. Usually the fish are going to be ambushed. The predators that you want to catch are usually going to be sitting in those weeds and then waiting for little fish to swim by, and then they're going to jump out and get those little fish. So usually if you can get your bait along those weed beds, you're going to attract something as well. And then also, like if you're fishing for bass, they like to hide under just about anything. You're usually what's looking for what we call on our sonars feature. So they're not going to usually just hang out in a wasteland with nothing to hide, because the stuff that they're trying to eat can see them coming. So they're usually going to be hiding under fallen trees, under docks, under boats, lily pads. Those are the kind of things. If you see a big lily pad field, cast along the edge of the lily pads, you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to get something biting after a few casts. So it's the biggest thing that at the end of the day that fishing is going to teach you, is patience.
Oh yes.
You're not just going to catch a fish first cast every time.
No.
It's going to be 10 casts, and then all of a sudden, like you were just saying with your friend, you cast it at that same spot for 20 minutes, and then you got sick and tired and left. But then Buddy goes there and he throws maybe a different color lure in there, and then bang, first cast, he catches something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
it's not even a different color lure. It's just a worm.
Well,
every time.
You have to remember that what you know for one lake or one river could be completely different in another lake and another river. So that's why the guys who have a ton of different colors of different varieties of things sometimes do better, because they just pick the right color for that day for that fish.
If you follow any of any of like the professional anglers that like go to tournaments and stuff, they'll have an entire garage full, and you ask them and they'll be like, so what's these ones for? He's like, oh, this is for that lake. And then they'll be like, oh, what's this box for? Oh, that crate is for this lake. Because they go to all the lakes for the tournaments, and they learn what works at each tournament.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's not the same thing that works at this lake that works at that lake. You got to try. And so when you get to a new lake, you got to try different stuff till you start hooking into stuff.
An age-old strategy I'm sure Dave has heard of is called match the hatch. So when you get to a lake, if you don't know what's in that lake, well, you put out a minnow net, put a little bit of bread in there. They tend to go for old white bread. They go nuts for that stuff. Put a little bit of that in there, throw your minnow net out, and then see what pops up in the minnow net. Now you've got an idea of what's actually living in that portion of that lake. You're off to a start. You've got some intel, right? So that's what my old mentor taught me is one important thing. Get to know your lake because they're all different, man. What you know about fishing one spot is different in a whole other area.
Yeah, if you just look at different types of minnows, right? You got smelts that are more of like a little silver and black, and then you have, if you go some of the more bass-filled lakes, they're usually feeding on like little perch, which is like a black and orange. So, and when you go to a bait shop, you'll see all these colors, right? So it's like, it can be a little bit overwhelming when you walk into a tackle shop. It's like, what do I get? What do I start with? So if you go to some good places like where I'm at, the local angling shops are got some pretty cool guys in there, and they're willing to help you. I think that sometimes fishing can be a little intimidating. Some people don't like to share. Some people don't like to share their secrets or their special holes, but most people are pretty good and want you to catch fish. And so the best thing to do is talk to some locals. Even if you don't have the right stuff, go out and fish, and don't be afraid to chat up the guys on the river and on the wharf, wherever you're fishing. Most guys will be happy to show you what they're fishing, and even if they're not, just look at their lines. Eventually they're going to have to pull it up, and you'll see who's catching and who's catching on what. And all right, 100%. That guy's catching on those little power baits. All right, I'm going to go grab some of those next time. So again, just be patient. Don't be afraid to go back a couple times, and don't be afraid to talk to strangers with when it comes to fishing. Most fishermen are pretty chatty when it comes to going there. My dad has a bunch of friends that like he only sees them when he goes to certain places, and they know each other by name, but like they'll never see each other unless they are down at the wharf fishing, but they're always there, so you're going to see them.
It's a great way to learn is watching other people fish. I learned most of everything I've learned from watching other people fish, because my dad didn't really know much about fishing. So I started out young, but I had to open my eyes and keep my ears peeled open and pay attention. And so you don't need a lot to get started. Like Dave says, the spinning rod is, all I run. And I'm sure a lot of purists would tell me, oh God, you need this and that. And they're probably right, but I'm making do with what I got. And right now it's spinning rods, and they're fairly accessible to the general public. You don't have to spend big money. And there's certain things you're going to learn the hard way. Like that big expensive lure you bought. Well, it's probably the first thing that's going to snag, and, break your heart when it goes.
It's fine to buy the $15 lure, but you better buy some half decent line to attach it, or it's going to just snap off after. The biggest thing I find with line is buy quality line, because it'll be okay in the beginning, but usually the difference between good line and shitty line is the good line will last longer and will take abuse, and you don't really realize it, but like pulling that line through weeds, through brush, catching it on stuff, just handling it at home and in your vehicle, it gets abrasion on it over time. And even after I usually reline most of my reels once a season, at the end of the season, because it just it just gets all kinds of little nicks and kinks and everything. And you look at it, and if you look closely at it, some people's vision is better than others. It's so hard to see the line these days, but you'll see little frays on it, and that means it's time to change it. And even me and my father are seasoned anglers, and even we made that mistake this year. We fishing on Lake Erie, we are using these big what we call a leader. So we have basically the way we have it set up where we're fishing is we're trying to get down to specific depth. So you have what's called a dipsy diver that'll bring it down to specific depth, and then we'll put about an 8-foot leader of line and then a lure to get it away from that dipsy diver. And that leader, we were in the middle of July, and then we started, I think on one day, two of our 4 rods, they snapped, and like we lost fish.
Wow.
and our $10 lures with it, all because we weren't paying attention to that. They were totally afraid. We looked at the other 2 and we were like, holy shit, no wonder those things broke. These things are beat to shit. We've been catching so many fish on it already throughout the past couple of months. So now, lesson learned, got to be more on top of your tackle, making sure that it's in decent shape. Try and protect your investment. Like you said, those lures are not cheap.
Definitely.
But you can get started,
Yeah,
like you said, with a. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, for the most part, I just go with the good old hook and worm. I'm not as concerned about the lures and which lure does what and whatever, because at the end of the day, if I'm at the point where I'm fishing for my life, do I really care which lure I have, what brand works well? Probably not. I just want to catch something on my rod that I'm going to be able to eat. So,
absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can use a piece of, a stick and a piece of string. At the end of the day, you'll probably hook into something edible.
Definitely, and if you're fishing for your life, I definitely recommend live bait. Worm, frog. A frog. This is saying, if you want to catch a bass, just have a frog.
Yeah, frog or worms. Quickest thing we've done, like for little streams, is just look under big rocks. You're almost always going to find creepy crawlies and little skinny worms. I don't know what it is. People always buy those big fat like night crawlers from the tackle store, and I've actually found that like trout will eat those little skinny worms.
The little guys.
Yeah, way more. Just load your hook up with that, and you'll get a couple trout.
That's a good tip. I like those little trout.
That's a good tip. Yeah.
Yeah, the fat ones I find are probably usually for, you put those on bass.
Yeah.
But if you're in a stream and it's trout in the stream, the little skinny worms are usually the way to go.
I like that. One of my successful combinations is using a tube jig. And a tube jig is basically a plastic tube that you can slip onto a weight, which is on the end of a hook. You basically hook that to the end of your line. For those of you who've never seen it before, that's what it is. I'm trying to describe it to somebody who's listening in what a tube jig is, but it's basically a weighted hook with a little plastic lure that you slip on top of it. One of the things I like to do is combine worms, just a segment of worm, into that hook prior to slipping over the tube jig. And so now you've got something that looks like a live bait that the fish is interested in, but you've also got that tasty smell and flavor of the worm. And that seems to be a really great winning combination. That's cheap too, because if I lose a tube jig, I'm not going to cry. I have usually a bag of them. So yeah, there's different ways to get into it on the cheap. That's one of my successful ones, is combining those two. And again, you don't have to spend big money, although I have seen Rapala and Rapala type baits that classically hit fish all the time. And so they're my go-tos.
We were fishing mostly Lake Erie last year, like the main lake for walleye. And, some people swear by live bait, but we were just using specifically colored like copper-backed lures, like the 3.5, 4 inchers. And we caught our limit every day that we were out. Once the fish are out in the main lake, we had no problem catching fish. The only thing I find with Lake Erie is you just have to be willing to go out far enough, get into the deep water. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Lake Erie. It's a very shallow lake, and it takes literally miles for it to get deep. Like Lake Ontario, you can be out. You don't even have to be out a mile, and you're already in 150, 200 feet of water. Whereas Lake Erie, we go out in the middle of July to get to 70, 75 feet of water, and we're almost 10 miles offshore. So like it gets pretty hard to see, right? So there's a bit more risk involved with that, right? You need to be paying attention to the weather when you're out that far, and making sure that nothing's rolling in during the day, and make sure you got a radio that works, because 10 miles is a lot of ground to cover if weather rolls in. Even if the boat's at full tilt, our boat goes pretty fast, but once it starts getting rough, like you generally can't go full speed, and it can take a solid half hour to get back in when you're 10 miles offshore.
That's a great point.
You bring up a good. Yeah. I was going to say, you bring up a good point. Even just mentioning 10 miles out and getting further away from shore, even just the disorientation of knowing exactly where you are and how to get back to the dock that you launched from. Paying attention to all that's important, right?
Yeah, it's very easy to get turned around when you lose shoreline vision, field of view. That's a big one. But there's also the fact that you don't want to be out on water that's too big for your boat. So.
Right.
I've got a canoe that's big enough to get me into big enough water that I could get myself into trouble. And so if I'm not smart and I stray very far from shoreline, and like Dave says, if a system rolls in while I'm out there, I'm completely exposed in a canoe. And while it's stable enough for me to stand now and then and hit the bass with it, it's not really safe to be out in a canoe on a big lake like that. So that's just something I'm going to avoid doing. But you got to remember the size of your boat for the lake you're on.
It's probably the most scary thing I've seen on Lake Erie was watching guys go out on like little 12-foot tinners, and the side of the boat at the back's only like this high. Like, it's only 18 inches at most at the hull, at the back, at the transom. And these guys are going, 2 miles, even they're not going out as far as I am, but they're still going 2 miles offshore. And that lake, even with a 10-kilometer-an-hour wind, you already got rollers that are, 2 and 3 feet high. I don't know. It just doesn't seem worth it to me. I've talked to a couple guys that I've met up with on a couple of Facebook groups for Lake Erie, and one of them is doing, he does, what's the word I'm looking for? He's a volunteer Coast Guard for Lake Erie. So like he uses his boat, and then the government kind of pays him for his services. And he's got a lot of stories. Like it just, the biggest thing he says that bothers him is that people think that they're going to get charged money when they call for help from the Coast Guard, even if it ends up being the biggest one is, my engine's died, I can't get it started. Should I call for help or should I just try and fix it? And it's like, well, call for help and then try and fix it. And then that way, if you can't fix it, help is already on its way. Whereas people think, if I end up, not needing them, they're going to charge me money for not using them and wasting their time. It's like, no, it doesn't. Your taxes pay for it. It doesn't cost you anything.
They would rather show up and not be needed
100%.
than show up and be needed.
100%. And so that's that blows my mind. But I was like, you know what? I can see how people think that, but it's pretty crazy that there isn't more of a campaign, so to speak, where they need to get the word out, where like that's just not the case. If you need us, call us. That's what we're here for.
And speaking, calling for help and getting assistance when you are out on the water, Dave's got a good question in the live chat. He just asks, does what 3 words work on lakes or just on land? And it breaks up the entire world into a grid. So no matter where you are, those 3 words in the app, assuming you can get the 3 words in the app there, it will it'll pinpoint you no matter where you are in the world.
What's that? Sorry, what are we talking about?
So it's called What 3 Words. It's a little application you can put on your cell phone or mobile device, and it'll it's geographically split the world up into little quadrants, and those quadrants have 3 words. It's just something easier for you to remember instead of having to remember the GPS coordinates. So then when you contact emergency services, you can say, I've got these 3 words from the What 3 Words app, and then they can triangulate exactly where you are in that little grid.
Yeah. Okay. So, right on. I'll have to look into that.
Super handy little application.
Yeah, the one thing I installed on our boat as soon as we got it was a radio, and then this radio you program your boat serial number into it, and then there's obviously a distress beacon. You can just press that button, and it'll just start sending out basically a beacon to where you are. So as long as the boat's not totally underwater, It should be okay, and even as long as it doesn't go to the bottom of the lake, it should be still working. It's supposed to be, waterproof. It's supposed to keep working even if it gets wet. So another thing to make sure. But the thing is, people don't do is they don't program it. So like they get the radio, they get it installed, but then they just, the radio's there. It works. It must work, but you have to put some info into it to make sure that it's useful.
That's a good
Is that
tip.
like a marine type of radio, or is it a certain type of?
Yeah, it's like it's a marine radio that I got,
Yep.
from the motorsports store where we got the boat. It's got a pretty decent size antenna. It's about I think that antenna's about 7 feet. It's pretty long. So I can hear Coast Guard talking clear across the water. They're up in I could hear Coast Guard talking up in Buffalo, and I'm down I'm usually going out of Port Glasgow, which is like right in the middle of the lake, I'd say, as far as east-west. And so, yeah, you can pretty much talk to anybody on the lake with that receiver.
Cool.
It works pretty good.
Impressive.
Very nice. So as far as setting your line up, just going out for basic fishing, nothing crazy competition-wise, are you just doing line, hook, worm, or are you doing line, lure? Are you putting anything between those and between the line and the hook, or
usually you're just gonna
look like?
Yeah, I mean, usually we got either bait casters or like a softer tip, like ugly stick. But as far as line, usually you're gonna go with like fluorocarbon. 10, 12 pound test is usually pretty good these days because the technology's come so far along. And then you're usually just putting usually just put a swivel on it. Cause like I said, you're usually trying a lot of different things. So you're usually taking lures off and on. So I put a swivel on there that makes popping them off really quickly. I know some guys that they start getting to a point where they find that's too much trouble. So they just start buying extra rods. And so you'll see like guys with like a stack of 6 rods. So that way it's just all right, this one's done. Just stack it here, grab another one. It's like it's getting a little prissy in here. I don't know. That's a lot.
Man. I'd rather have 2 or 3 rods and call that good. So I've got my ugly stick. That's my do everything.
That's my all around like Jack.
Yeah, jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades.
Who doesn't have an ugly stick?
It'll take a bit of abuse and keep working for you, and it'll land fish in the boat. It doesn't have the greatest feel out there. There's other rods out there for a greater feel if you want to do like some lightweight work with bass, or one that I love to finesse with the feel is black crappie. Those will produce a lot of fish if you find a nice hole, and you're not too fussy about getting the biggest, fattest fish, because the biggest,
you're
fattest
just getting
ones,
fillets off those. Filling the pail. That's what's all about with those fish.
Exactly. You can take a whole pile of these. I think it's 30 per person in one
something like that. Catch. Yeah, some places it's 50, some places it's 30.
We're talking about a lot of fish here, friends. So if you can get your hands on a crappie setup that you like, I just run light line. So what I do is I switch out lures. I use multiple lures. So if you're frugal like I am, you can have just 2 or 3 rods, 1 or 2 lightweight ones, because contrary to popular belief, you don't need monster rods for the average game fish. You can do just fine with a light medium action. Medium action to heavy is like for heavier fish, or if you're trolling and you're running from a power boat, maybe, I guess. I don't know. I've just never needed, because I don't go after big steel. I don't go after the big deep fish, right? I do go for walleye, but I don't go for lake trout and that sort of big deep species that I'm sure Dave gets to hit a little bit more, but that's different kind of rigging, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. Lake trout are a big fish. They're up there with like salmon. So you need heavy duty gear, even for the stuff that we're doing on Lake Erie with the walleye. It's you need heavier rods, heavier reels. Like we're using what's called we're using braid. So basically the main line that goes down to that dipsy diver, like I said, braid doesn't has no stretch. So it's when it's down, because you're trying to count, like I said, exactly how deep you are. So the dipsy divers will come with like a chart on the box, and so they'll be like, you let out 85 feet of line, that on this setting it's going to be down 35 feet. So you don't want that braid stretching, because that's going to throw off where you are on your depth, because you're trying to put it where you're seeing fish on the TV, like on your sonar. So you're going to use braid and heavier rods and heavier reels. So it's going to be a lot more money for that kind of stuff when you're fishing for big fish in deep water. So yeah. Use just like kind of like firearms. Use the right tool for the job. You're not going to use your ugly stick to try and catch a 30-pound lake trout. He's going to snap the rod in half, right?
Correct. You're gonna have a bad day.
Yeah.
There's a great comment too. Don't use the light rod for pike either. Well, sure,
Yeah.
if you're in pike territory, you might want to change your setup. Right. So pike territory, pike are known for cutting your line off. Right.
Yeah. If you're specifically going for pike or muskie, which I think they're basically call them like the barracuda of the freshwater. You're gonna want to use like a steel leader, so that way because I don't know if you ever looked in the mouth of a pike or especially of a muskie, but they literally have teeth inside their entire mouth. Like they've got 2 rows on the top of their mouth, and then they have their jaw, and then there's like another 2 rows on the bottom. There's like 8 rows of teeth in the mouth of a muskie. It's just all teeth. Like never stick your hand in there.
Oh no, it's the stuff of nightmares, folks. Don't do it if you're squeamish, man. It's
a quick way to need a trip to the hospital for some stitches.
It is, but Dave's right. If you're in pike territory, definitely run a steel leader of some kind. At least something that's maybe 6 inches long, 5-6 inches at least, maybe more.
It depends on how big the pike are, and if you're in your lake. If they're pretty big, you're probably gonna want to get 12 inches. Honestly,
definitely.
You think about like how big it is from like the front of their mouth to the back of their throat. Like if they swallow it, the bait could be all the way at the back of their neck.
So true.
You want to make sure you got enough steel braid that you're not going to lose again your $8 your $8 lure.
Or these days it's what, $12 a Rapala or something like that. They're pretty dear nowadays.
$12 to look at it and $20 to buy it.
Yeah.
Often how it is. So yeah,
I see a lot of.
Yep. Go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say I see a lot of there's a lot of chat in the on the YouTube about live bait. There are a few things I'll say. One thing, always check the regulations for where you're at, because some lakes do stipulate no live bait. The main issue the main thing you always want to follow though, whenever you're buying live bait, is you want to buy it from that area. Like legally, you have to, because they don't want species getting transferred to different lakes. So don't buy your minnows down in the GTA and then go up to Algonquin fishing. Buy your minnows up in Algonquin, and keep your receipt when you buy it. You will get in a lot of trouble if you don't have. If A, you can't produce the receipt, and B, if you are found to be using bait that's not from the area, it's a big no-no. So make sure you read all your hunting regs, your fishing regs before you go out. There are some rules that you need to make sure you're following that are kind of intricate like that, or convoluted like that, where you need to be paying attention. You can get caught.
Oh yes, there's a difference between what to know to do for survival and what's going to actually get you in trouble with the law. And just remember that depending on your jurisdiction, I'm pretty sure it's the case in all of Canada, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but MNR have more search and seizure rights than any other lawful authority on the land.
Mm-hmm.
So
they'll take your boat, they'll take your car, they'll take you don't get them back till you're proven innocent. So if it's a big enough like charge, it could be 6 months before your court appearance, and you're not getting your ship back till that court appearance happens. So
that's just your first appearance to set the actual date for the other appearance. That then sets the date for the other appearance. About 4 years later, you might get your stuff back.
I had a friend that had a hunting incident up in Thunder Bay, and they were down from Southern Ontario, and they had to take a flight all the way back to Thunder Bay for twice, like you said, once to basically get a hearing, and then second time for the the actual court date. So it was a, you're looking at like a $2,500 fine probably for the big no that you made. You lost a ton of shit. So like in this case, they lost their boat and all their rifles, and then they also, a plane ticket to Thunder Bay is not cheap because it's not a place that goes to that flights don't go there very often. So you're going to be paying a premium to go fly there, or you're driving 16 hours there and back. So who the hell wants to do that? So it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars for that boo boo.
So it's a really good point to pay attention to the rules and regulations while times are good. Of course, if everything takes a dump and those aren't around anymore, then you do what you got to do. But while times are good, obviously, the rules and regulations are good to know about. They're good to follow because you don't want to end up in that hot seat of, no, your stuff's gone, right?
Yeah. And there's good examples of even YouTubers who are out there doing survival videos. And I was watching one of them in particular, and they got themselves into trouble. And it's kind of a big public thing now because they were showing all these videos of what they were doing in survival, and it was working. And they're catching fish and they're eating, but they also ran afoul of the law and they got themselves into trouble. And, just remember that all these great techniques and everything we've all been taught, a lot of stuff I've been taught I can't do. I was only able to do it because I was doing it with a fellow who didn't have the same legal constraints as I, put it that way. Right. And so, I had the benefit of learning so much, but I can't do those things. Right. So just remember that just because you saw it in a book or on YouTube doesn't mean it's legal in your jurisdiction. Thanks for reminding us, Dave.
Come on. You mean everything on the internet is not true? Come on.
Oh, come on. Although I will tell you something that I can vouch for. Daredevil spoons. If you've got no experience fishing and you hook one of those things on your line and you've got nothing live, chances are you're going to catch something with it. So, just make sure you have the appropriate line to put it on. So if you've got a really heavy spoon, put it on a good heavier line, right? Because only a big fish is going to go for a really big spoon unless it's one of those really aggressive little sunfish, rock bass that go for all of that shiny
the lure's
stuff.
bigger than they are.
Yeah.
I don't even know how they fit the hook in their mouth.
But it feels like they're 1,000 pounds on the end, though.
Oh, absolutely. They hit it. That's sometimes, it blows my mind. Sometimes you get the hardest strikes, especially bass. You get the hardest strikes from the smaller guys. And it's like if you think for the first 10 seconds it's a big 10 pounder, and then you get it to the get it by the boat, and it's like, oh Jesus, it's like thing's like barely the size of my palm, but
barely worth lifting the line up for, but it's on there now, so you gotta do something with it.
There you go. Here's another question for you. So just talking about we can feel the fish is on the end of the line there. You got something. Do you count the 5 before you pull the end? Do you count the 3? Is there any kind of trick that you've found to successfully actually hook the fish? Or
you need to do what's called setting the hook. Now, don't watch fucking Instagram and YouTube too goddamn much, because some of the kids I see on there are just absolutely ridiculous. Like, to the point one guy makes fun of himself because he's yanking so hard every time. So when I say setting the hook, you're letting them gobble it for a little second, and then you want to pull up on it to get that hook to go pierce through the mouth so that they're on. But yeah, you watch some of these YouTube guys and they're literally breaking their fucking rods. They're yanking so hard on the line. I've seen guys pull so hard. It's like that little that little tiny bass that you thought was a big one. They yank so hard on it, the bass comes out of the water and then flying back behind the other side of the boat. It's like, just settle down. A good tug is what you need. Even when you're ice fishing, you're usually gonna little jigs, and you're going to feel something nibble, and then you're just going to feel your rod kind of start pulling down, and that's when you want to lift right up. You're usually you want to lift straight up, and again, getting that hook set in the mouth. That is a big part of fishing that takes a long time to learn, honestly. And it's why it's not called the old saying, it's not called catching, it's called fishing. You're not going to always catch everything that you hook into, and that learning how to set the hook properly, and again having that patience to let him nibble at it just a little bit more, before you set that hook can be the the difference between catching it and or just grazing it past him, and he's gone. I mean, we were just me and a bunch of the boys from the Patriot podcast were ice fishing up in Nipissing a little not too long ago, a few weeks ago. There was still ice and whatnot on the lakes, and
Yep.
as many fish as we caught, we probably had 3 times as many bites and minnows stolen throughout the course of the weekend. From they just they're good at it, right? They just
So
they're
good.
good enough to just chomp off that minnow and just tug it in such a way that they're tugging it off the line and or off the hook and completely missing the hook from getting in their mouth. And it takes a lot of patience and a lot of bait apparently too sometimes.
It does. And some fish you can barely feel them at the end of the line. The signature is did I just feel my bait move? You probably did.
Yeah, pull up.
Yeah, go ahead and pull up. Yeah.
Especially in the winter months, the fish are obviously moving a lot slower. They're cold blooded, so they're not going to be as active. So the bites are going to be a lot lighter. So those soft tip ugly sticks come in handy because you're just gonna see a little, almost a vibration. You're gonna think you maybe just like grazed a rock or grazed the bottom or something, but no, that was actually probably a bite. So
yeah, it's that's similar feel to what it's like to hit those black crappie that I love in the summertime. There's very delicate little bite, and if you yank the rod on those to try to set the hook, you're going to tear through those paper mouths of theirs.
Yeah.
So you don't have to violently launch that fish out of the water. But yeah, and in fact, let's talk about that. A lot of people want to celebrate the big fish, right, Dave? But would you agree with me that it's the 1-pounders on most game fish that are like the really good eaters?
Generally over a certain size, I'm putting those fish back for a couple reasons. A, they don't taste as good, and B, those are the ones that are breeding and spawning. Call them spawners. So
exactly,
take your picture and get that thing back in the water. The 1-2-pounders, whether it's trout, whether it's walleye, whether it's bass, generally are always that perfect leanness to the meat, where it's just meat. There's no fat on it. The meat hasn't absorbed a lot of the contaminants, I guess you could say, in the water, especially when it comes to the rainbow and the salmon. Once those things start getting probably over 8 pounds, is like, it's not worth it anymore. Just throw it back. They're just too big, and the meat's got too much fat on it. They don't taste as good. So I usually we always putting those back. Like I said, take your picture, enjoy the battle, and then let it go back and make some more fish for you. And that was kind of what I wanted to kind of get into next, was just like ethical fishing.
Let's talk about that.
You have your limits as far as the regulations are concerned, but for walleye, for instance, if you have your sport license, which lets you keep more, you're allowed 6 a day. But like, if you live by yourself, are you going to eat all 6 of those fish in one day? And like, I caught a bunch of fish this year over the winter or over the summer, and I was vacuum sealing a lot of it, but I still haven't gotten through all of it. So my plan next year is to dial it back a little as far as how much fish we're keeping. But just if you want the good fishing spot to last a long time, don't fish it out. Don't one, that's putting the big ones back, and 2, just keep what you can eat for that week. Generally, like with a trout, you only need to keep one, and a piece of trout with fillets that are this big, you can eat trout for freaking every night that week if you're by yourself, and you can go back again next week and catch another one. So just making sure that you're taking care of your good fishing spot is I think it's sorely lacking. I think a lot of people are just catching everything that swims and throwing it in the boat, and it's kind of hard to see sometimes. And it's just like, are you actually eating those? And I'm hearing, I hear a lot of stories, and it really makes me mad that, these guys go fishing every single day and they're giving it away to whoever wants to take it because they don't need it. It's like, well, if you don't need it, just put the fish back. Like, I don't mind you fishing. We're all here to fish because it's fun. It's the thrill of the the fish and pulling it in and taking a picture. But if you're not going to eat it and you're just literally giving it away because you don't actually need it or want it, I can guarantee if you're giving it away, you're probably wasting some too. So just put it back in the water and let someone else catch it.
Yeah, great point. And remember, if you're pulling certain kinds of fish species up from deep, bringing them up that from that deep, you're probably going to kill some of them.
It's very stressful.
It's very stressful on them. Yeah, it's hard.
That's the other thing. I'm not a huge fan, honestly, of like those bass tournaments.
Yeah.
They've done some studies, and there's usually at least a 30 to 30. It's like I can't remember exactly the number, so don't kill me on the fact check. But I think it's something like 30% of the fish after once they get released after the tournament, something like 30% of those fish they die within the year. Just from they just overstressed, and often they'll be catching them from the other end of the lake and then bringing them down to the other end of the lake where they're doing their weigh in, and they just always release them there. They don't bring them back to where they caught them, and so again, that's very stressful for the fish, because bass are a weird animal. There seems to be about a 50% of them like to travel around, but then the other 50% of them like to stay where they are. They don't move. They'll stay in the same general area, square, like 100 meters square. They'll stay in that like same area for their entire lifetime, years. Like it's very stressful on the fish when you take them out of their habitat and then putting them back in. So I'm not a huge fan of bass tournaments, if I'm being honest.
And it's very easy to overfish an area. Very easy. If you take the time to speak to any of the old folks who used to be around, the old wisdom was you would change up your lakes. You would go to different places to go to different fishing spots so that you're not fatiguing a lake. And by fatiguing, I mean killing away all the breeders, right? And all those good big fish, like Dave is mentioning, remember, folks, those are your breeders. Those are the ones that are making all the fish that you're catching. So if you wipe all of those out and you're putting away all the little ones, you're not giving the entire lake enough time to renew itself. And you're going to kill off that lake even faster as those younger fish get fished out. If there's a road by it or a trail by it, odds are somebody is fishing it. So if you really want to do the environment a favor and learn to fish and have a lot more success doing it, go farther out. Appreciate the nature that comes with it. I love fishing those little backwoods lakes. For one, it's a lot less impact on nature in terms of all the boats and human activity. It's usually just me going in, not carrying a whole lot with me, right? So there's different ways to fish. You don't have to exhaust the lake. The little backwoods lakes, man, you can throw a sock in there and you'll catch your fish. And you don't always need to catch your limit, right? If you've got 2 or 3 good fish, you've got a good meal there. And I'm mostly in it for the fish. I want to eat it. I don't know about you, Dave, but I love.
Yeah, that's why we catch fish. Me and my dad. My dad eats serving of fish at least 2 times a week. As long as he's been catching, if he's got fresh fish, and I've always got fish. I usually eat it at least once a week, and I have, I keep some vacuum sealed in my freezer as well. So even when haven't got out, like right now, I've only been out ice fishing this winter once, because it's just, as we know, it's just been a really mild winter down here, so it's been pretty tough to get out. So I got lots in my freezer to keep fish on my plate. But if you want to catch some big trophies that you want to take a picture with, the little lakes that you have to walk into that are hard to get to, like that's where you're going to find the big stuff. And especially in Ontario, we're blessed with all this fresh water. You go up north past North Bay, you can just start. You take a leak in any direction, you're going to hit a small lake that probably has some massive fish in it. I know. I was talking to the bait and tackle guy up in Nipissing there. He showed me a picture. He caught a trophy speckled trout about another 2 hours north of North Bay, and he said it was 11 pounds, which was only like a pound off of like the world record. some little lake in the middle, some little lake in northern Ontario. So there's some awesome stuff to be had if you're willing to do a little bit of walking and traveling in there.
Definitely, and you'll get to see so many great things along the way. Even if you don't catch a fish, but odds are you'll catch something if you go to those backwoods lakes, and you won't need much. So
Yeah, there's the wildlife. If you go, New Brunswick, northern Quebec, obviously BC, Alberta, like even the quietest days of like not catching much, you're probably going to see some bears. You're probably going to see some moose. There's usually bald eagles always flying around. There's just, the lake is that's where all the life goes, right? It's
right.
water. It is life. So you're going to see lots of stuff throughout the day if you're just hanging out.
Guaranteed. Even if you don't catch fish, you'll learn about nature. And a lot of the things that I learned just sitting around while waiting for a bite, looking at birds, looking at the sign, fish sign. There's all kinds of fish sign, right? It's always where you're not, or where yeah. So that's how it is. But I love observing nature around me when I'm out fishing. It's not just I'm completely zoned in on the fish.
So I have a bit. Maybe this is an off-topic question or something for maybe another podcast somewhere down the road or whatever. But do you have hints for cleaning the fish and how to clean it properly so you don't get 50 million bones or anything like that? Or do you have any subtle hints for that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just understand it takes practice.
Yeah.
Even I'm not that good at it. My dad's been doing it for years and years. My dad's a strong proponent of doing it with a regular filleting knife. He hates those electric filleting knives that you can get at Bass Pro Shop these days.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I agree with them. They tend to waste a fair bit of meat. The way I see guys using them, but basically what you're trying to do is you're usually cutting. This is usually for bass, walleye, that type of fish. You're usually cutting along the top on either side of its dorsal fins all the way down, and you're just trying to separate the fillets from the rib cage. And then usually once you've got those fillets, you can separate them from the skin. Again, with your filleting knife, it's all about finesse and a sharp knife. And then the last thing you're doing, I started doing this trick, is especially with walleye, you can zipper them. So the main thing is getting the rib cage bones out. So once you've separated the fillets from that, you're fine. But then there's also another, it's called the lateral line. So if you look at a fillet of like walleye, you can see a line that starts at the back and it'll go all the way down the middle. And there's that's where those little bones are that everybody hates getting in their mouth when they're eating fish. So if you cut about 1 inch on either side of that center line at the very back, and then you just zipper it and you just pull the half the fillet away from that line, and then you grab that little, basically you just made yourself a little like 1 inch piece, and you're just pulling that away, and then that center piece that's left will have the lateral line bones in that, and so then you'll be left with two skinny pieces of fillet that have no bones in them whatsoever. And then if you're eating perch and crappie like Gunny likes to eat, just eat them.
Oh yeah.
The bones are so tiny, like they're not going to hurt you. Like
on those, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
On pike,
pike
I do the top slab technique. I take off the top slab and then I take the fillets off the side.
Yeah, that pike are tough. The bones in them are absolutely massive. They have these big Y bones that go all the way down it. Same with muskie. And then for trout, if you're just catching little brook trout, usually just cut it up the stomach and just empty them out. And then usually you can just cook them with the skin, and chop the head off, and then you usually just cook them in the skin, and then you can just eat the skin. Like it's got good oils in it and stuff for you, and you just use your fork to pull the meat away from the bone, and then you can usually just pull it out, and then you just have your other fillet on the bottom. And then if you're catching bigger stuff, this works for the bigger trout and salmon, so like lake trouts, rainbow trout, steelhead. I usually just cut them into steaks about this big. And again, you're cutting them the same way you're cutting the walleye, where you just want to get that main rib cage up at the front out, and then you're going to be left with lateral line bones. But you can feel these, and the way to get those out, Chef Ramsay's actually made a good video. You just want to get a really good set of tweezers, and you can actually just grab them and you just rock them and pull them out. So it takes a little bit of time, but you can get, once you get the hang of it, you can get pretty quick at it and they come out. But I usually just leave them in because, like I said, they're very obvious. Once it's cooked, the meat comes down, you can see them, and then you just pull them all out and just put them off to the side. So it's not that big of a deal with those fish as well. So yeah,
and if you don't finesse or don't, if you don't want to give those bones to your guests, I usually have my Leatherman around with a nice needle nose, set of pliers, and a deft fingers. You can very quickly find the tips of those bones, quickly pull them out. And then your children and your loved ones don't have to worry about the bones so much, because nothing will turn off a kid from fish like having bones in them, right?
That's probably that was the biggest thing, that my mom never partook in the eating of the fish throughout my entire life. My dad was always eating fish, but whenever he was eating fish, she would just cook something else that night because he just couldn't be bothered dealing with bones. Just wasn't about it.
Well, there's the old man who taught me to fish told me that I don't remember if it was I don't remember which particular band it was that he dealt with, but he said that there was one particular nation, their big thing is they just grind it all up. They take that pike with all those bones, they just grind it all up into fish balls and they fry the fish balls. So I might try that this year. I'll let you know if I have any success with that.
I would still try to take the bones out, but that's just me.
I'm going to try. Like I said, I'll try everything once. I'm adventurous, but I'll give that a try and I'll report back here on the channel. We'll see how that works out. But
I forgot there is one more type of fishing a couple of people in the chat are talking about. I have done it before. And so even if you don't have a fishing rod in the spring, you can usually fish for smelt. They're basically just little fish. They're bigger than minnows, and when you cook them, they're basically you just take the head out and take the head off and degut them, and then they're fish sticks. Basically, you just eat the whole thing, and you just use a little net. They usually come in late at night, usually around midnight. The best way to fish them is usually right at the mouth of little brooks, little rivers, and they'll come in, and you're just scooping them up with a net. With a flashlight, looking at the water, you'll see them coming in from the lake to into the little rivers.
I don't live far from Lake Simcoe, and
used to be huge runs there.
Yeah, there's still some of them, but
yeah.
I mean, back in the day, the problem was, and I'm not knocking anybody from the six or from the GTA, whatever you want to call them. But they would come up and they just had no concept of somebody's private property. Yeah. They would just trape over it. They would catch whatever. If they found something they didn't like,
5-gallon pails of that stuff at a time.
They just dumped it and walked away. And they just really left a lot of mess, and it really ticked off a lot of the locals, and to the point where they were literally putting up pieces of fence right up to the edge of the water line and sitting out there and all night long with somebody saying, "Stay off my property." It just.
Yeah, there was a lot of overfishing going on Simcoe with smelts. People were catching them by the 5-gallon pail and again giving it away, because who's going to eat? I know one guy personally, he kept 6 pails, and I gave him shit. I don't talk to that guy anymore. But yeah, 6 pails of smelts. Big pails, and it's we would catch one. Me and my dad would go. We would catch 1 pail, and then we would spend the next day cleaning them, because that's 500 smelts. It's a lot of smelts, and we would put them in Ziploc bags of 40 in a pack, and then we could have smelts once a week for the year. But we were a 4-person family, and that's plenty. That Ziploc bag's plenty for a family to have that as a meal all year, but. 7-gallon pails, 7 pails of 5-gallon pails of these smelts. Of course there's none left in Simcoe. That's ridiculous. So yeah, that runs pretty much over. Where I go is with a buddy at his cottage. I don't want to give away where it is, but we go a little further north. There's still lots, and there's still a fair bit in his lake. Nothing like what it was on Simcoe. We'll catch maybe I think last year we caught 100 altogether. We caught 2 Ziploc bags worth of smelts, and that was like, that was over a whole weekend worth of, doing lots of drinking, and then at 12 o'clock walking over to the the little brook that goes by his house, and hanging out with a flashlight, and having some shenanigans, catching smelts. But yeah, those
And
times are gone.
part of the other thing too that I would see all these people catching smelts and stuff is, I've had them. I'm not saying I'm 100% fan of them. A lot of people don't like them. They do have a different flavor. They have a different, depends how you cook it, whatever. So you catch these and you give them to somebody and they don't like them. They're just going to pitch them. And yeah, like you say, they've just fished it right out. So.
Yeah, like I said, goes back to that respect.
Oh, definitely. One species you should not overlook if you don't mind darker fish and stronger tasting fish is the mighty catfish, of course, but his related cousin, the barbutt, the mudpout. That fish, I just love eating those fish, and the greatest time to fish them is, of course, in the springtime. But those will definitely feed you. So get to know the different fish that are out there. It's not all about the fish that are overfished. You can have a good feed of fish without stressing out your local game fish and still have a good time. And especially if you're getting the family into it, it's great to get kids into the fishing. They love that stuff.
Absolutely.
And it gets them away from screens, and it gets them doing things that, their little eyes and little hands will thrive on, like making knots and doing that. It's the first thing you should teach them how to do is how to knot up a hook on a line. Too many little ones today don't know anything about knots and working with string and rope, and darn it, it's a really easy thing for them to learn. It gets them away from the screens, and it's really healthy for you to be out there learning this stuff, even if you're not catching a thing. But it sure helps if you do. So get some worms.
Yeah. Even if they catch this tiniest little sunfish, watching the smile on their face they'll want to come back fishing with you, right? And like I said, for me and my dad, and I'm sure parents around the world, like fishing with your kids is definitely a good bonding experience that you can share with them their entire life.
Yeah, that's a great time. They won't forget it. I never forgot my early fishing experiences. And I almost enjoy getting somebody else to start fishing and them catching a fish. Even if I don't, I'll enjoy them catching their fish as much as I will when I catch one. So if you do fish and you haven't gotten somebody started, well, please do get somebody started in fishing. Show them how much fun it is, and lend them one of your fishing rigs. Show them how to use it. It doesn't take long, and man, I don't know, it really enriched my life. So I'm still wanting to learn all these other techniques that are higher dollar and more kit, and I'm just not there yet. But eventually, because I've got this grand plan of fishing everywhere. But Dave, do you also use? Now I'm having a horrible brain fart. You see them in streams, the floating line.
Floating line, like a fly fishing rod?
Fly fishing, thank you, sir. Yes.
I've
do you fly fish?
I don't fly fish. My dad's done a little bit. I've as I'm getting older, I become more of a fishing connoisseur, I guess. I do want to try it. I've never gone fly fishing. It takes a certain finesse. My dad's shown me it a little bit. The thing is, those little flies that you use are actually very delicate. So if you start, you think you're on Instagram, right? And you start whipping it, you'll throw, those things will fall apart. So you got to have basically the technique down of how to, get your line to where you want it to go, and how you throw those lines out. And I wouldn't be able to teach you, because like I said, I haven't done it. I'd have to practice. And I don't own a fly fishing rod, but it's definitely something that's always interested me. But at the same time, it's more of a river thing. There's not a ton of rivers where I go. But the old float and row bags is more what me and my dad do when we're river fishing, either in any one of the Lake Erie or Lake Ontario rivers. But I think I would like to try and get somewhere further north, maybe with my dad, while he's still able to some sort of fly-in place, and maybe do some of that. Because, yeah, I mean, it's a bit. You kind of. I feel like it's more of something in more remote areas, and there's not a lot of remote areas left in southern Ontario.
No, agreed.
But
I got the taste of Arctic char, and now that I've had that, man, I've got to go north and try to get my hands on some of that. I don't know. There's just so many different kinds of great fish. Have you ever had ling?
I have never had ling. I almost caught a ling last summer, actually. Lost it right at the dock. But those things fight like crazy.
They are insane. They're harder fighters than catfish.
Yeah, I don't know if they're. If anybody's ever seen one, yeah, they're like pure muscle, and like they're not like, they don't look like kind of like a traditional fish. They have like a one big tail. They don't have like the split tail like we're usually used to on most fish. And yeah, those things are crazy. I don't know.
Insane.
Hard to describe the power I felt when I caught that. I didn't know what I had. I was like, man, this thing, that feels like it's like a 20-pound muskie or something on it. Just rod just bent down.
That's the exact same feeling I had. It was spooky.
Yeah, and then the son of a gun got right to the dock, and then he dove under the dock and like wrapped it around and snapped the line, and he got to live another day.
Wow. See, mine behaved the same way. It dove down. It kind of wanted to go under and around the canoe, and fought me for quite a long time. Heavy fight. Not a short fight like the bass or
bass usually you're at the water you're at the boat within 20 seconds.
It's a quick affair. Even a pike doesn't fight like this. This thing fought me quite a long time. Wow, what am I working with here? And it finally came up, and it was just this massive ling, and we fried it up with very good fish. But
I've heard they're good eating. I've never tried it, but I've heard that they're actually like pretty good eating.
Very good fish. I don't know how I would go about targeting it, but I was just curious if you ever had one, because that was a great eat. But nobody ever talks proudly about eating a ling.
Yeah, there's not much in southern Ontario that I wouldn't eat other than like those big carps. I would stay away from that just because they're so big. First of all, like I said, when they get to a certain size, and like, first of all, carp are bottom feeder, and then if they're 30 pounds, I don't think that's going to taste too good. Now,
probably not.
I've seen some people take them home, but I'd probably, unless it was an absolutely dire situation and I actually caught one of those, I'd give it a go. But, and the other thing is too, is like, they're also so big that they're a tackle breaker. They break rods because they're so freaking big. So I wouldn't specifically target those, but just about every other fish in southern Ontario, you can pretty much eat. Everything's edible.
Yeah, that's true. We're pretty fortunate to have all this fresh water.
Exactly.
Because a lot of the fish that you will pick up are quite edible. I've never eaten a sunfish. I don't know if there's much meat on that.
Again, that's more of a survival situation. If it's all you got, there's some meat to be had, but generally throw those back. It's usually the fish that I like to eat for dinner.
Exactly, right? But yes, get out there and fish is what I would say. Talk to anybody who does some fishing, and they'll probably be glad to show you what they learned. Hey man, I learned how to fish for barbut with worms and line. And that's it. No hooks, just worms and line. And it's very, very easy, very doable. So you don't need a lot of money. You don't even need a boat. If you've got a bridge somewhere over water somewhere, there's probably somebody fishing it. Maybe stop by and watch them for a couple of minutes, see what they're fishing with. Maybe ask them, hey, what do you run? And then go and replicate it, man. They got fishing gear at the dollar store now. I don't know how good it is, but they got fishing gear at the dollar store.
I'd say usually start at your Canadian Tire and then work your way up, kind of thing.
Yes,
Canadian Tire usually got deals on something, right?
Yeah, you'll often
almost always
that rod and reel combo, and that's a good way to start. Having a decent knife to cut your fish up with, a filleting knife is definitely the way to go, right, Dave?
Yeah, definitely you want the soft tip filleting knife.
Yeah.
You need that sharp tip and to get down into the fillets and along here, so you can follow the rib cage, like I was saying, without
Yeah.
you don't want to actually cut the rib cage. You want to follow the rib cage, and then you also need
Yes.
You need that tip to be able to bend without breaking, which you're not going to be able to do when you're using your Kershaw or whatever. It's
Definitely.
a little too stiff, right?
I'm going to give one piece of advice about the filleting knife that people overlook is that you should remember to use the tip of the knife to feel. You can feel with that tip of the blade when you're against the ribs. You can feel when you're against structure, when you're against connective tissue versus flesh. Take the time. Don't be too much in a rush. The biggest mistake is being in a rush with a filleting knife. Use the tip to feel.
Yeah.
Other than holding your hand and showing you how to do it with you, that's my best advice.
Another thing, like you said, with watching, right? There's the nice thing about where we launch in Port Glasgow. There's a cleaning station in the wharf. So if you want to learn how to cut fish, going out there for an hour, just watch the guys cut the fish. You'll see somebody eventually not using the electric ones, and you'll see how to fillet a fish properly. There's a few different ways to do it. Yeah, there's honestly no wrong ways to do it. Just try and get as much of the meat off the fish as you can, and just keep trying to do a better job with every fish that you catch. That's all you can do.
Is it just me, or is the first that you do every season the roughest, and then
it's a sloppy mess.
I found the same thing.
It usually takes at least 2-3 fish to get into the motion.
Agreed.
And the one thing I will say, we've had our fish whisperer catch and clean some fish, and we've had it fresh. And I will say this to you: if you have never had fresh fish out of a lake and you think the stuff in the store is good, you have no idea. You have no idea. The taste is so much different.
We used to bring sometimes we'll bring just a little camping stove with us, and we'll fillet one up and cook it right there on the shore, because it's just a little S&P, and it's the best you'll ever have in your life. You can't. One thing is, you're spoiled once you start eating your own fish. Once you start catching and eating your own fish, you can't buy that store-bought stuff ever again in your life. You really can't.
I have to agree with Dave. And what's your favorite bush and roadside, lakeside cooking oil? I like lard, because it seems to capture all of the moisture in the fish. It doesn't dry out the fish.
I'm a butter guy. I always like real butter.
Butter.
It's hard to get past butter.
That's a classic, but you can't go wrong.
Very nice. Yeah. Well, I think we've covered off some basics for fishing. Any last minute thoughts from anybody on the panel before we move along, or last minute things you want to get out there? I see wheels spinning.
Don't sweat it if you think your gear isn't up to par. Just get out there and fish.
Don't be afraid to be skunked on your first time out or your second and third time out. It takes honestly an entire lifetime to master fishing.
Definitely.
Just go there and go with the expectation of catching nothing and just having a relaxing, quiet day, and you'll be better for it. And then when you catch something, you'll be ecstatic, right?
Totally. And if you're one of those detail-oriented types, just remember, you can probably land a 12-pound fish with 8-pound test. All right. It's all about technique. It's all about
my dad's using for the big salmon run in Port Hope. Usually in September, it's 4-pound test. Now you're using a 12-foot rod to make up for that, but 4-pound test, because you need to use really thin line because they can see it. So
there you go.
Yeah, it's not impossible.
There you have it. Awesome. Thanks for that, bud. Because I know a lot of people who will go, "Oh, you can't be fishing for that kind of fish with that kind of."
You can catch anything with anything, first of all.
Yeah, I love it when somebody says can't.
That'll be like maybe my last.
I'll try it. Yep.
Probably be my last tip is setting the hook, and then the second part of that is do not horse the fish. Let the fish run and tire itself out, and bring it into the boat. I've seen too many times that it makes me and my dad laugh all the time. We'll be fishing for whitefish on Lake Simcoe in 20 feet of water. So it's not like you're very far down. That's not deep water. and you're catching whitefish, and they have a very soft mouth. They kind of like a sucker mouth, and so you cannot horse that fish. And we see these guys from the city that are just like reefing on it and constantly reeling, and then sure enough, it'll be like 5 minutes and all of a sudden gone. Their rod goes straight and it's gone. You just got to let the fish run, let it tire itself out, be patient. Fishing is a sport of patience, and from trying to catch the fish to when you actually catch the fish, be patient. Let the fish come to you, and keep the line taut, keep the line tight. But you gotta let it tire itself out. Don't try and horse it into the boat. You'll lose it. You'll snap line or snap the thing out of its mouth every time.
Yes, 100% agreed with Dave on that last point. That's a big one. The old man who taught me to the point that if you didn't fight the fish appropriately and you need a net to get it in the boat, you didn't fight the fish appropriately. You have to tire out the fish good and tired, but you don't need to whip that poor fish around and beat it up because you're just disrespecting the fish at that point, guys. You don't need to beat the thing up. Land it appropriately, fight the fish appropriately, which means let the line be taut against the fish. Let the line play out the fish. The fish is going to tire itself out. You'll know. It'll come to surface. It'll have the play taken out of it, and that's when you're ready to reel that line up and take it out of water. And other than that, don't make the mistake I made of trying to grab your fishing line. That's how you lose the fish. That's all I've got.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it there then. That's lots of really good, valuable information. Sure, you're going to make a couple anglers out of a few listeners, that's for sure. And appreciate you, Dave, taking the time to come out this evening and kind of share your knowledge and experience with us. And
absolutely, thanks for having me.
Get the world of fishing out there to some people.
Right on.
All right, we'll move into the podcast challenge. So easy one for this episode. Grab a fishing rod, get out and try to catch something, preferably a fish of some sort. All right. Upcoming events. We've still got the annual Preppers Meet coming up. So check out annualpreppersmeet.com, and the early bird tickets are still available. They're still $100. Still a fantastic event. Like we've been saying for the last couple episodes now. New venue this year. Lots of like-minded folks coming out. It's always a good time to get out and just chat with some like-minded people. Friendly group. If you're new to this, everybody's willing to share their knowledge and chat with you. So don't be afraid to come out. And even if you're seasoned and you've been doing this forever, come on out and talk to some people. It's a great event. And Jeff, you got a weather blurb?
I do. Been a couple weeks since I had something I passed last week. So as I mentioned in the news topic, the Maritimes are getting hammered with snow. They are one of the few areas in Canada right now that actually have below average temperatures and snow. For the most part, the last several weeks have seen above average temperatures, and except for one shot in BC, basically very little precipitation. Just to give you an idea of the weird temperatures, on January 30th, Maple Creek, Saskatchewan was 21.1 degrees Celsius. In contrast, Cape Coral, Florida was only 18.2. So that kind of give you an idea how backward ass things were and things are. A good portion of the western provinces presently, they have no snow on the ground at all. And this can cause some serious problems come the spring planting season. They rely on that snow to get that moisture into the ground so that when they plant, the seeds have some moisture in the ground to germinate. And if they're planting into basically dry dirt, that's not going to bode well for them. So let's hope in the next few weeks, month or so, they get some precipitation out there, be it rain, snow, whatever. But it's funny, on the opposite coast, California and parts of the West Coast are being hit with back-to-back atmospheric rivers. Santa Barbara, California is also experiencing some fairly high wind gusts with this atmospheric river. So along with the saturated soil, they are having trees coming down like crazy. Lots of power outages, lots of trees down. National Weather Service has issued a flood warning. It covers over 1 million people in communities northwest of Los Angeles, including Santa Barbara, Oxnard, Thousand Oaks, and Simi Valley. Along with them getting rain, you get into the higher elevations of the Sierra Nevadas, and you're getting snow. And it's pretty significant snow. So a lot of them are getting similar to what the Maritimes are getting for snow, which for them is not that unusual, but they're getting that. Hopefully, this will be now. Hopefully, if you're somebody who likes winter or doesn't mind winter, hopefully this will be the last week of the above average temperatures. We're going to start seeing a return to seasonable temperatures. I don't think we're going to get a deep freeze or anything like that by any means, but we will see a return to more, seasonable temperatures. But before that, we're going to have about another week of warm weather, potentially significantly warm air. In my area in central Ontario, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they're calling for temperatures between 6 and 8 degrees every day. So,
it's fine by
everybody's. Pardon?
So it's fine by me. I just spent.
It's fine by you, not by me, but that's okay. We're all different. A lot of the small towns and small areas that rely on ice fishers, rely on snowmobilers, rely on all of that stuff. They're hurting. They're shutting down. They're laying people.
Snowmobiling's been non-existent this year.
What's that?
I said snowmobiling's been basically non-existent this year. The seasons did it even get started? Really? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I'm a big snowmobiler. I'm heavily involved in our club. I groom trails, and we haven't turned a track on our groomers here in almost 2 weeks, which is basically unheard of. Yeah. Like I said, where I am in central Ontario, we have not had a day where we received 5 centimeters of snow or more since the 13th of January. We've had, a little bit of snows here and there and stuff like that. We haven't had one day where we got more than 5 centimeters of snow since January 13th. So it is what it is. I think things are going to turn around, but we may be to the point of no return. So we'll have to see how bad this next warm up is as to whether or not there's anything left.
Crazy.
Yep. Outside of that,
only takes one snowstorm once it gets colder again to bring it back to life. But it's not looking good this winter though.
Depending how cold it is. I mean, for us, we built snow bridges over swamps and all that stuff. They're gone. The swamps are open. They're running. The water's actually flowing. We're not a snowstorm and a couple of days away from being able to open a trail. So it is what it is. But
almost sounds like you got to get a fishing rod out with flowing water.
Yep.
Well, there's still a lot of open water out there in places where
this year's to go on ice fishing. One thing I will say, it's been a very dangerous winter with main part of, there was ice fishing that happened on Simcoe, but the main lake didn't freeze over as far as I know. And I mean, we were all booked to go on a fishing trip around the Sunridge area on Lake Bernard, and it never froze over. So we ended up having to rebook our fishing trip to another 2 hours north to actually get to a lake that was actually frozen. So if you're thinking about doing any ice fishing, I don't know if there's much that's going to be had anymore for the rest of the year, but if you're going to be doing any ice fishing this winter, you really, really got to be careful. Make sure that there's keep drilling holes as you're moving out, and bring your ruler with you to make sure the ice is at least that, like, in my opinion, at least 4 inches. What's that?
Or I was going to say, the other thing is make contact with your local ice hut operators. They're the one. They're the experts. They're going to know how good the ice is. And I mean, if an ice hut operator is not going to put a hut out there, you shouldn't be either.
Yeah, there's lots of good channels now you can even follow on Facebook of guys that are just there. They're from the area, and they're just doing they're doing ice reports every few days just to keep people up to date on what the ice is doing. But yeah, it's been a really dangerous year this year. It's just because it hasn't gotten really cold, so there's not a lot of places that have frozen over, or if they had, it's soft ice, so it's like that white ice, so you can't really trust it. So just be careful if you're going out this year. It can get dangerous real quick.
Oh yeah,
yep, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Good advice.
So we'll move into a deal of the week. So Sales got a pretty big clearance on fishing gear. So if you're looking to fulfill the podcast challenge and you need some equipment, that might not be a bad spot to check out first. With that, I'll bring episode number 229 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, or of course your favorite podcast app. Please do submit a review wherever you listen. It does help other people find us and does the whole algorithm thing as well.
And we do record these shows live on YouTube and Facebook. Unless you're Ian and you are not allowed on Facebook, then you can find it somewhere else. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click the notifications tab. That will give you an alert when we are going live. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm not responsible enough to have my own email, so you can contact me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca, or you can find me frequently roaming the Discord.
I might cast the message along to Jeff if you email it.
And you can find me, the Frugal Guy.
Yeah, what is it? Two beers an email, or 3 for 5, something like that?
I might just put it on a piece of paper and cast it. See if I can get to your place from here.
Carrier
it's a terrible attempt at a fishing joke.
Yeah. We should bring back carrier pigeons. Until those come back, you'll be able to find me on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Instagram, and on the CPP Discord.
All right. How can people contact you, Dave? If you want to put something out, you don't have to.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My screen name is my Instagram handle. So if you want to see what I'm up to or shoot me a message on there, you can add me up, and then we can get in touch.
Awesome. For those listening to the audio version, that's diesel_6223. For myself, you can check out Rapid Survival.
Very appropriate, eh?
Yes, that is very good.
Yeah, 223, very appropriate. Yep.
So you can check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. You get me there on the live chat. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.
As we wrap up another insightful episode of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, we want to extend our gratitude to our listeners for joining us on this journey of preparedness. Remember, the key to survival is knowledge and readiness. If you want to support the show and engage with our community further, consider signing up for our Patreon and joining our thriving community on Discord. Links are in the description. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. This is the Canadian Prepper Podcast, signing off. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe, and keep learning.